Welcome to Hope Shot. I'm Sonia, and I'm so glad that you could join me today. So, going to jail literally changed my life. Since my last arrest, my life has not been the same. So, what happened? Well, I'm going to tell you today. But before I start, I got to give you a little bit of a backstory about where my life was before I went to jail. So, I'm a recovering addict. My clean date is 7/1/2019. That is the day of my last arrest. Previous to that, I was in addiction for 20 years. My addiction was really bad. I was an IV meth and heroin user, and I gave away everything in my addiction. It got to a point where my life was so unmanageable. I was living in a shed in somebody's backyard with no running water, no toilet, no food, no shower. I mean, it was really bad. I needed an intervention. So I had gotten into some trouble from drug charges, right? And I got put on probation. And every time they would let me out of jail, I would violate my probation, which brings us to my last arrest, right? July 1st, 2019. So I was running from a warrant. The police found out where I was and they came and they arrested me. So on my way to the jail, I got a text message, and all of the people that I was hanging out with at the time were all going to jail for conspiracy to traffic and amphetamines or in heroin. So basically, what that means is a conspiracy to traffic charge is where you make a phone call, and because of the phone call or the text message, you're setting up a drug deal, and that's a conspiracy to traffic charge. You don't actually have to do anything wrong other than just to make a phone call or a text. So everybody around me was going to jail for conspiracy to traffic, right? So on my way to the jail, I'm literally handcuffed in the back of the cop car and I'm deleting every single thing off of my phone because I had a lot of conspiracy like conversations on there. So anyway, so I see this message from this girl named Amanda, and she asked me if she could meet up with me. And I guess I had met her before, but I didn't remember because I was in my addiction. I didn't remember a lot. But anyway, so I seen it and it stuck out to me, but I just kept going. I deleted it, whatever. And then when I got to the jail, because I was coming off of opiates and Xanax and meth, they put me in a division of the jail called medical. So basically, what medical is it looks like a dang fishbowl, right? It's like this glass room. They stick like 12 girls in there. It couldn't be any bigger than like 12 by 12 maximum. That's like as big as it could be. Like it's about the size of a regular bedroom. And they put girls on what they call boats, right? So it's like this long plastic piece and it has a mattress on it that's about this thick. So they give you a mattress. It's really just like a pillow and they put it on this long plastic thing. And that's where you sit at while you're going through the detox. So that was horrible, right? I was in there with a bunch of other girls. They were all detoxing, throwing up, shitting, shaking, angry, anxiety, like all of the symptoms of detox. It was awful. And I was in the fishbowl with them. So when I get to medical, the fishbowl, right? There was a girl in there and her name was Amanda. Come to find out, it was the same Amanda that had messaged me on the way. And although I had met her before, like I didn't really remember meeting her, but we clicked right away because she sent me that message. She knew my friends. I knew her friends. We had actually met some other time. So we clicked right away and we became like really good friends. So we stuck it out in medical together after being in medical for days. They finally sent us over to what they call general population. So general population is like basically where they put everybody, right? Like they have different pods for different classes of people, like felonies, misdemeanors, violent offenders, crazy people. So like they have different pods. And Amanda and I went to the same place in general population for felonies. And they put us in the same room. So we started off in medical and then they moved us over to general population together and we shared a room together. So we continued our friendship, right? Like we were still becoming really close friends, really tight. Because when you're in jail and you have nobody to talk to and nothing to do, you get really close to the people that you're in there with if you guys vibe. So, anyways, so the day after I got to jail, I was still in medical when this happened, actually. So the day after I got to jail, the Department of Children and Families showed up. and they brought me a drug test because during my arrest and violations of probation, I have 2 kids, and my probation officer had called Department of Children and Families on me to try to have custody of my kids removed because obviously I was using and I wasn't a safe mom. So after I got there, the Department of Children and Families showed up because I had been basically running from them for about 6 months. So they showed up and they gave me a drug test. I popped dirty for like 4 different drugs. And that, so the case plan was now I couldn't run from it anymore, right? I had to face it. And I have the two violations of probation on 2 different cases. And then I had 4 felonies and a misdemeanor. So I had like a lot of points because each charge, when you get charged with something criminally in the state that I'm from, each charge carries a amount of points. And if you have a certain amount of points, then you are eligible to go to prison. So your points determine whether you're going to go to jail or whether you're going to go to prison. And because of my points, I had enough points to go to prison, and I was having custody of my kids taken away. They were putting a court case on me for my kids as well. So it was like the whole weight of the world fell down on me all at once, right? And, all my life I had been running and running and running from myself, running from my responsibilities, and I had been numbing my feelings with dope. So when I got to jail, I couldn't numb my feelings anymore. And I didn't have the one thing that I had had all the rest of my life, which was the dope, right? Nobody wanted to talk to me. My family wouldn't speak to me. I wasn't allowed to talk to my kids. Nobody would send me any money. And I certainly wasn't getting out of jail. And now, like, I know that to be my gift of desperation. I was so desperate and I hated myself so much for what I had done that I was so sick and tired. I was sick and tired of living the life that I was living. I don't know if I knew at that point in time that there was another way, but I knew I was sick of living that way in addiction and losing everything and not being a mom and doing things with myself to degrade myself to get more drugs. I was tired of that. So my friend Amanda, right? She went to this place called the Recovery Pod in the jail. And for inmates, it's like the prestigious part of the jail, right? Like we're down in this like dirty part of the jail. It literally looked like a dungeon. They called it the Blue Lagoon. Okay. So we're down in like the Blue Lagoon, and she applied to go to this place called the Recovery Pod. It was literally like the penthouse of the jail, okay? There was four stories, I'm sorry, 6 stories in the jail, and this was on the top floor, the 6th story in the newer part of the jail. So it didn't look like a dungeon. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't dark. It was like really, really nice, right? So she went to the recovery pod, and because we were tight and she was my friend, I wanted to go to the recovery pod with her. So I applied to go and I got accepted. So I went over to the recovery pod, right? And like as soon as I walked in there, you could just feel the difference in there. You could feel like God's presence or just this like ambiance and calmness as soon as you walk in there. It was nice. Like for a jail, it was really nice. So I go into the recovery pod and they have like requirements, right? You have to go to 4 meetings a day. You have to make your bed. You have to have your uniforms all nice and folded up and wear your uniforms correctly. You have to be quiet. You have to do chores. Like, it was kind of like, I don't know, like, I guess they were like teaching us accountability and stuff because I never had to do any of that stuff before. Like I wasn't used to getting up at a certain time for count. I wasn't used to doing chores and making my bed. I wasn't used to wearing my clothes, looking in an organized fashion. Now, although I was wearing like orange inmate clothes, I still had to wear them a certain way because you had to like, everything had to be on the up and up in there, right? So anyways, so I start going to these meetings and stuff. And one day, so the thing is, right, like when you're in jail, you want to get out of the pod because you're like literally on lockdown 24/7. You don't get to go outside. Like there's no movement going on, but they have my jail that I was in had what they call programs, right? So the programs are like Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Addicted to Christ, Church, Catholic Church. You could see priest. There was like sex trafficking groups. There was women's abuse groups. There was like a lot of different things that you can do if you sign up for them, and they're called programs, right? So I sign up for all the programs because I want to get out of the pod. Because when these people come in, like you get to leave the pod to go to their meeting for an hour. So of course you want to do that. Who doesn't want to get out of lockdown? So I signed up for all the groups. Didn't matter if I was Catholic or not, I was going. So anyway, so I went to this one group one day, and it was I believe it was a sex trafficking group was the group that I went to. No, no, no. I went to the abuse group. I went to the women's abuse group. And it's funny because in those groups, like I learned that I was being abused in the relationship that I was in right before I got arrested. The person that I was with, it was confusing for me because they never put their hands on me. They never hit me. They never called me names, but what they did do was they made me participate in things that I didn't want to be a part of. And I didn't have the strength or the courage or the self-worth back then to say no. I actually had Stockholm syndrome. Even though I didn't want to be there, I was there and I thought that I wanted to be there. If you don't know what Stockholm syndrome is, look it up. It's very interesting. So anyways, in one of those groups, right, the women's abuse group, they hand me a like piece of paper, right? And on the piece of paper, it has a picture of a blank mirror, like just the outline of a mirror, okay? Like one of those long mirrors that would go on the back of your door, like that's what it looked like. And on the other side of the piece of paper, it was blank because they can't actually give us a real mirror in there. They're not going to give glass to an inmate. So anyways, so they hand me this piece of paper that's got a mirror on it, and they tell me, write down on the back side of the paper, the blank part of the paper, who you portray yourself to be. Who do I want you to think that I am? Oh, I'm hard. I'm a badass. I'm this and I'm that. So write down all of those fronts that we put on for other people, right? And then on the inside of the paper, inside of the mirror, I want you to write down who you really are on the inside, the stuff that nobody else gets to see. What is your heart? Who are you? Oh my goodness. Okay. So I could write down on that back side of the paper all day long who I wanted you to think that I was. But when it came to writing on the inside of the paper, I had no idea who I was. I couldn't even write down one single thing, like nothing. So anyway, so that meeting got over and I went back to the pod that night, and they brought in a meeting that evening, and the meeting was about wearing masks. And I realized that my whole life I had been wearing masks. Every time I was around anybody, I became who I thought they wanted me to be. And I did that so much so that I completely lost my identity and I had no idea who I was. But God, let me tell you, because that's exactly where God needed me to be, was completely unknown and shattered so that he could remold me into the woman that he wanted me to become. So anyways, I'll get to that. I'm not there yet. So anyways, so I realized I've been wearing all these masks, right? The next day, I went to the sex trafficking group. Okay. And while I was in there, we were talking about identity. And they told me, they said, you are who God says you are, and you can be the woman that he created you to be. And that was so profound for me. Like, I'm not a bad mom. I'm not a dirty woman. I'm not, any of those labels, all of that shame and guilt that I had. I'm not that person. I am who God says I am. And what does he say? He says that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that he had a plan and a purpose for me since the beginning of time. And all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I loved God. I just felt like I was not worthy of him loving me. So, I remember being in another meeting while I was in the recovery pod, and they played a song for us. And the song was called Rescue by Lauren Dangle. And the lyrics of the song say, I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send my armies out to find you. In the middle of the hardest night, in the middle of the hardest fight, it's true. I will rescue you. And I remember when I heard that song, tears started streaming down my face. And I knew that I had been rescued, not arrested, because the place that I was living in before I got arrested, I was scared. I had to put up this hard exterior and pretend to be this person that could handle that kind of life. But in my heart, I was scared. I didn't want to be there. I didn't enjoy the things that this person was making me participate in, but I didn't know how to get out. And I couldn't say that I wanted to leave. You just don't do that when you're in that kind of situation. You don't want to put yourself or your family in danger. So you keep your fucking mouth shut. And that's what I did. But when I was in jail and I heard that song, I knew that God rescued me, not arrested, rescued me. And that's really where the seeds of hope started to be planted for me. Because if he rescued me, then I was supposed to be where I was at that moment. And if I was supposed to be there, then he had a plan for my future. And I didn't know what it was because at the time I thought I was going to prison. That's what they told me I was doing, was going to prison, and I was going to lose custody of my kids. But I at least knew that I had been rescued. And that was about all I needed to know at that point in time. So I remember another one of the meetings, the ladies told me, they made us repeat out loud that we are women of grace and dignity. Nobody ever called me that. My whole life, I was full of shame and guilt. I was dirty and I was bad. I was a whore. I was a home wrecker. I was never a woman of grace and dignity. And when they would come in there for those meetings and they would tell me that, I don't know if I believed it, but I said it. And I said it enough times until I started to believe it. And today, I am a woman of grace and dignity. I say that about myself all the time these days because those ladies planted those seeds in me back then. I remember another one of the meetings, they brought in this church crew, right? And the church crew played as a sermon. And the sermon was about what they call re-entering the room. And this has stuck with me since I've been in jail, right? So basically, what re-entering the room means is that you get to go back into those places of hurt, go back into the places that you've made mistakes, go back to the places that you've wronged and re-enter the room. Go back to the room of relationships. Go back to the room of careers. Go back into the room of motherhood. So it can be a physical place, it can be an event, or it can be a category of your life where you get to go back into that place that you have these traumas, mistakes, failures, and you get to go back as a new person. The situation hasn't changed. I've changed. But you get to go back as a new person and re-enter that room and create new memories there, good memories there. You get to right your wrongs and succeed in the same places that you have failed. And I will tell you, it's been 3 years since I sat there and listened to them tell me about that. And I have re-entered rooms that I never thought I would have a chance of. So that was real. Okay. So I was looking at going to prison, right? They wanted to give me 20 and a half months in prison because I had the 4 felonies, 2 violations of probation on 2 different cases. And I also had the case plan on my kids. So they were offering me 20 and a half months in prison at the lowest amount possible. I could have been facing 20 years in prison, but the lowest amount that I would be allowed is 20 and a half months. Now, like I told you guys earlier, I ran from my case plan with my kids for the first 6 months, and they had just caught up with me because they came to the jail and saw me, and they wanted to take custody of my kids. Permanent guardianship is what they called it. They wanted to give that to my mom. And, I'll just say thank God for my mom because she was able to keep my kids when I wasn't able to be a mom, and she held our family together. So I'm grateful for her. But so anyways, so I had 56.7 points, which equated to 20 and a half months in prison. I was in another meeting one day. Listen, there's magic in these meetings, okay? Like as I'm sitting here telling you guys this, like I realize all of these what I call God moments, right? These spiritual awakenings or moments when my mind is opening and my heart is opening and I'm seeing things differently. All of these things happen in one of those meetings. They weren't all like AA or NA. Like some of them were church, some of them were teaching meetings. Like it was just different, those God moments. So anyways, I'm in another meeting one day and I get a call from my public defender, and my public defender says, okay, listen, we're going to take the offer because I was on what they call a fast track. So when you violate probation in the county that I'm from, you go to jail, or I'm sorry, you go to court every 2 weeks. So if I wouldn't have taken the offer for 20 and a half months in prison, I would have been back in 2 weeks. And the judge had already seen me a few times that year, and he already wasn't very happy with me. So we were going to take the offer. Well, the person that ran the meeting that day, after the meeting was over, because I got the call during their meeting, she said to me, she's like, so what happened? And I said, well, they're offering me 20 and a half months in prison. She's like, okay, you know, um, she advocated for us women. She was one of the first people in my life that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. During her meeting, she would come in and teach us mindfulness classes. And, I just remember, I always wondered to myself, anyways, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Let's keep going. So anyways, the next morning, right, I'm going to court and I go through a series of holding cells on the way to court. And in the very last holding cell, was in the courtroom, and I'm basically like in the waiting room, but it's a holding cell for inmates. So all the other girls had gone out before me, and I was the last one in the cell. I'm handcuffed and shackled in there by myself, sitting on concrete. It's not like a waiting room in a doctor's office. It's like a waiting room in a jail. So anyways, I'm sitting in there by myself, and I remember like closing my eyes and just praying and saying, God, if this is what you want for me, to lose my kids and go to prison, if that's what I'm supposed to do, fine. I surrender to that right now. And to be honest with you, that's what I thought I deserved. But if there's another way, if you have a plan for me, if I'm here for a reason, then I surrender to your will right now. So I walked into the courtroom after that, and that lady from the day before was in the courtroom. She had got me accepted into treatment overnight, and I got a chance. And like I said, I had been in front of that judge a few times that year. And the judge told me, he said, listen, he said, this is your chance. If you come back into my courtroom, I'm sending you to prison for a long time. So you better take this chance and run with it. And I believed him. So I got ordered, instead of going to prison, I got ordered to treatment, 4 months of intensive treatment, followed by a year of community control, which is basically house arrest, followed by another year of drug offender probation. And you're talking to the same person that violated probation 2 times the year prior. So in a way, I kind of felt like it was a setup, but I knew it was my chance and I was going to go for it. I went to treatment. Okay, so wait. So I want to go back about that lady for a minute. So I always wondered to myself, like, what did she see in me? What did I say or do that made her believe in me? And I don't know that this is true, but I'm just guessing because I remember this. I was in her meeting one day and I don't even know what we were talking about, but I remember sharing and I remember saying, I'm 34 years old. I've lost my kids. I have no job, no home, no car, no license. I have nothing. I am a big failure. I might as well just give up. There's no hope for me. But boy, was I wrong. And I believe maybe that might have been what she's seen in me because that lady's seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I will tell you, what she saw in me helped me to start seeing something in myself. So I went to that treatment center, and that was the first thing in my life that I ever successfully completed. I started working on my recovery. I started working on getting my kids back, working that case plan. I had very little time to work it because I had ran for the first 6 months. So I had about 6 months to complete the case plan. But I started working my ass off and I stayed clean and I did the next right thing and I took the suggestions. They told me that if I want what they had, I had to do what they did. So that's what I did. If they told me that I needed to jump through hula hoops to stay clean and to get my kids back, that's what I was going to do. But my life is truly blessed today. And when I look back on that experience of going to jail, I'm so grateful for it. It changed my life. I've been to jail many other times. And, I've had people ask me, like, what was different? Why did you choose to get clean this time? And, the thing is, I was just done, man. I was done. I was tired of being the person that I was being. I was tired of living that way. So when I got to jail and I had a chance, I ran with it. I wanted something different. I didn't know how to get it, but I knew I didn't want to live like that anymore. And that is what changed my life. So today, when I look back, I remember that pain that I went through, that gift of desperation, because it helps motivate me forward to know where I never have to go back to again, so long as I don't pick up. One day at a time, I get to stay clean and live my best life. My kids are home with me. My husband and I have reconciled. My life is truly something out of a romance novel. It's amazing, so I hope to give you a little hope with my story today. Thanks so much for joining me, and we do recover.